In the last video, I covered the redesigned and revamped gym leaders from across Kanto. Today, to follow that up, I'm going to look at the Elite Four in the champion fights of Pokémon Red and Blue to see how we can change them up and improve upon them. To start with, let's go over our rules again. While redesigning, my main goal is to keep the original essence of the gym, or in this case, Elite Four members. 3 of the 4 Elite Four members specialize in 2 different types each. Lorelei specializes in water and ice types, Bruno specializes in rock and fighting types, Agatha specializes in poison and ghost types, and Lance specializes in dragon types, though there's only one line of dragon types in this generation, so we'll see how that goes. When designing the gyms, an important rule I followed was that each gym leader's ace would remain as their ace. The Elite Four don't exactly have a single ace Pokemon each, but I will keep any iconic or important Pokemon that make up their original team. Each team will now have 6 Pokemon as well. I also want to add, when designing these teams, I didn't actually take into account the awful Generation 1 AI, so in practice, some of these movesets might not actually work out due to the AI in these games being super janky. So now that we have that out of the way, we can get to our teams. If you go on to enjoy the video, make sure you consider liking and subscribing. These types of videos take a long time to create, and it is currently only me working on them, so any support would be amazing. The first member of Kanto's Elite Four is Lorelei, the water and ice type specialist. Lorelei's original team is honestly quite solid. Freeze in Generation 1 is permanent, with you only being able to defrost if hit by a fire type move, so traversing this fight can be extremely tricky with bad RNG. Fortunately though, only her Jinx and Lapras can actually freeze you. Her Dugong lead is quite bulky, being able to rest and restore any health if you get into a slow fight with it. Her Cloyster can trap you with Clamp, and slowly chip you down with Spike Cannon while confusing you with Supersonic. Slowbro has potential to set up on you very quickly with Amnesia, but its only attacking move here is Water Gun, so it can be dispatched quite easily. Jinx and Lapras can then come in with some huge hitting moves, Ice Punch and Thrash from Jinx, and Hydro Pump and Blizzard from Lapras. Overall though, this team can be dispatched quite easily if you bring any decently heavy hitting special Pokemon with Thunderbolt. Going into the redesign for this team, that was something I wanted to address, but I ran into issues with the actual Pokemon selection. Ideally, to play around the Thunderbolts, bringing in a Pokemon like Whiscash would be perfect here, as its ground typing gives it full immunity to the Thunderbolts, and the 4 times weakness to Grass is helped by the Ice type Pokemon surrounding it. The issue I found was that none of the ground types available to us within Generation 1 felt cohesive with the aesthetic of Lorelei's team. Even looking at grass types to take advantage of Electric's half damage, I couldn't find any Pokemon to fit well within her team. I did eventually find a solution, but we'll get to that soon. Here is Lorelei's new team. Her Dugong can now present a bit more of a threat. I've traded Growl for Headbutt, Aurora Beam for Ice Beam, and Takedown for Surf. This new set allows Dugong to have much more presence when it is out on the field. Ice Beam over Aurora Beam gives it much more damage potential, as well as Surf and Headbutt supporting this for extra coverage. This Cloyster might just be the most dangerous on the team now. I've only made one change, but it completely changes the dynamic of the fight. I've traded out Spike Cannon for Self-Destruct. This change gives Cloyster much more threat potential, being able to clamp to trap you in and prevent you from switching out, and then self-destructing. This essentially turns Cloyster into a ticking time bomb, and you have to decide how you want to play this fight out. You could either preemptively switch in a tank to try and soak up the self-destruct damage, or you could opt into trying to just beat the Cloyster before it can self-destruct into you. From there, Slowbro is given a few new tools to support its Amnesia setup, with Water Gun being traded for Surf, Growl being traded for Psychic, and Withdraw being traded for Disable. These changes allow Slowbro to actually have a decently threatening offensive move pool if it is able to set up, rather than just being stuck with a 40 base power Water Gun. As we talked about before, the new Pokemon I decided to add to Lorelei's team is actually a Chansey. I decided against any Grass, Electric, or Ground Pokemon for this team, as I really felt none of them fit cohesively with her style and aesthetic. While Chansey doesn't have any type advantages directly against electric types, her special bulk helps her to work as a wall against them. She brings with her a slow, potentially annoying set of Seismic Toss, Thunderbolt, Soft Boiled, and Thunder Wave. This set is designed to slowly stall out any special attackers threatening this team and to slowly work them down with either Thunderbolt or Seismic Toss. Obviously, she is extremely physically frail and any fighting types can easily break through this wall, but bringing them puts them in danger of both Slowbro and Jinx's psychic typing. Lorelei's Jinx comes only with 2 changes, Double Slap replaced with Reflect, and Body Slam being replaced with Psychic. Overall, this Jinx set worked really nicely and added a lot of presence to the spine of her team. Its Psychic typing, same as Slowbro, is a really nice addition to threaten any fighting types looking to break through the Ice types. Ice Punch allows it to threaten a freeze on any of your Pokémon, and its new utility tool in Reflect allows Jinx to become quite bulky and soak most hits. Finally, I've actually kept Lorelei's Lapras exactly as it was. Lapras as a Pokémon is both bulky and quite heavy hitting, and this moveset reflects that. Confuse Ray has the potential to be extremely frustrating to deal with, while Body Slam and Blizzard are both heavy hitting moves that can inflict status effects on you. Its Hydro Pump and Blizzard, both 120 base power attacks and boosted by Lapras' stab bonus, can threaten any Pokémon and act as the final hurdle to the first Elite Four member. Overall, I'm quite happy with Lorelei's team. All of her Pokémon are quite bulky and present a decent threat on their own. With the changes made, it isn't as easy to sweep through her roster with a single Thunderbolt sweeper, and hopefully more thought and planning is required. The second member of Kanto's Elite Four is Bruno, the fighting and rock type specialist. Bruno is often considered by far the easiest of the Kanto Elite Four, and with one glance of his team it's easy to see why. He brings 2 Onix with identical movesets, a Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, and a Machamp. Unfortunately, there are some big issues with this team to address, but honestly I'm not sure if I can fix them all within Generation 1 mechanics. Obviously, the double Onix is such a big waste. This Pokemon has already featured as Brock's ace previously, and the Pokemon itself is nothing special. At a glance, Hitmonchan's coverage looks great, but since this is Generation 1, there is no physical special split yet, so each of the elemental punches are special attacks, drawing from Hitmonchan's pitiful 35 special stat. Hitmonlee's moveset is actually quite nice. A lot of high damage potential and high jump kick and mega kick, as well as plenty of wiggle room for you to outplay it. And finally the Machamp, which runs Leer, Focus Energy, Fissure and Submission. This isn't the worst thing here at all, but any flying type can dodge Fissure and make Submission worthless. Obviously, there's a lot of room to work and improve here. This team has glaring weaknesses to Water, Psychic, and Ghost types that will need to be improved. Water and Psychic types would easily be able to sweep through this team, and Ghost types can completely dodge Hitmonlee's attacks, as well as Machamp, excluding Fissure. Going into this redesign, those glaring weaknesses are my main goal to remedy and improve upon. Here is Bruno's new team. I decided to keep the 3 fighting types here and remove both the Onixes. To fill the remaining 3 spots, I have included a Poliwrath, Golem, and maybe an unusual choice, a Pinsir. Bruno's new lead, Poliwrath, is a really underrepresented Pokemon within Kanto, so I wanted to showcase it here. It's also the only non-monotype fighting type Pokemon we have in Generation 1. Poliwrath helps to deal with any water types that plan to come in and sweep them out. It comes with a moveset of Hypnosis, Submission, Bubble Beam, and Double Edge. Bubble Beam and Submission are decently strong stab moves that Poliwrath can throw out at any of your leads. If left unchecked, the Hypnosis can halt your plans and allow Poliwrath to freely start swinging with deadly Double Edges. His Pinsir has been brought in to help with any Psychic types that plan on taking down the upcoming fighting types. Move pools in Generation 1 for many Pokemon are extremely sad, especially for bug types. In Generation 1, there's only 3 damaging bug type attacks, with the highest potential damage from them coming from Pin Missile. Also, only 2 Pokemon can learn Pin Missile, and one of them isn't even bug type. Regardless, this matters because Pinsir, as of Generation 1, can't actually learn any bug type attacks to properly punish Psychic types. Either way though, Pinsir can still be a huge threat with its relatively high base attack. It brings with it Slash, Swords Dance, Submission, and Bind. Due to its base attack, if Pinsir is able to set up with Swords Dance, its upcoming slashes can be incredibly dangerous. Submission and Bind are available to follow this up as well if you try to defend from this with rock types. I decided to keep Hitmonchan as is. It does suck that all of its coverage is special, but I think it's still important. It also comes with Counter, which can be a huge swing in the fight if you miscalculate your damage. Unfortunately, Hitmonchan is just a victim of Generation 1 mechanics. Hitmonlee is another victim of Generation 1. Earlier I talked about how my goal was to improve coverage so ghosts weren't completely immune to Hitmonlee and Machamp. Well, it turns out Hitmonlee can only learn fighting and normal type attacks, so honestly not much I can do here without cheating. Regardless, I feel that the new set will vastly improve its potential. I've traded out Jump Kick for Meditate and Focus Energy for Substitute. This new set allows Hitmonlee to boost its attack with Meditate while stalling you out with Substitute. Obviously this set still allows itself to be completely walled out by ghost types, but I think this set allows it to heavily threaten anything else. Bruno's new Golem fills the same niche that Onix did, only this time much more threatening. This Golem comes equipped with Rock Slide, Explosion, Earthquake, and Counter. Rock Slide gives Bruno solid coverage if his fighting types have been taken out by flying types, and Earthquake is just a generally strong move at 100 base power with stab bonus. Counter is a really nice backup tool, depending on how the Golem is being dealt with too. To finish off this set, Explosion gives Golem a last second tool to try and take you down with it. Due to the Explosion threat, it would be best to take down this Pokemon with either of its 4x weaknesses, Water and Grass, to try and prevent it from taking you down first. Bruno's Machamp comes in much more threatening this time around, with Leer replaced by Rock Slide and Focus Energy replaced by Body Slam. This new moveset is just all around threatening while being backed up by Machamp's huge base attack. Like Golem, the Rock Slide covers Machamp for its flying weaknesses by threatening any flyers. Submission is still here as Machamp's strongest fighting type attack, as well as Body Slam as a heavy hitting normal type to also threaten paralysis. Fissure is still here to threaten potential one-hit KOs for any non-flying types as well. Overall, this redesign was quite tricky to figure out. It's a bit of a shame that Pinsir doesn't have any access to bug type attacks to help deal with any psychic types. The same goes for Hitmonchan's physical special split issues. The coverage is important, but it feels really bad that we need to rely on 35 base special to get it. There's also the issue with Hitmonlee getting completely walled by ghost types. But regardless, I think considering the tools and mechanics we have available, Bruno's new team is a huge improvement on before. The third member of Kanto's Elite Four is Agatha, the Poison and Ghost type specialist. Agatha's original team composition makes you painfully aware that the Ghastly line are the only ghost types in Generation 1. She brings 2 Gengars, a Haunter, a Golbat, and an Arbok. This team is really a victim of 3 Generation 1 relics. First, in order to be a ghost type specialist, all Agatha can really do is just cram in Haunters and Gengars. Secondly, poison type attacks in Generation 1 just aren't very good. The best poison type attack we have access to is Sludge, at 65 base power, but only Coughing and Muck lines gain access to these attacks, and both of these Pokemon star prominently in Koga's team. Even ignoring Sludge, a lot of secondary poison type Pokemon, like the Gengar line, don't get access to any poison type attacks at all, usually being stuck with poison status moves instead. And finally, even if the Gengar line, for example, did get access to any poison type attacks, poison type is considered a physical attack type in Generation 1, so they wouldn't be all too useful anyway. Overall though, Agatha's base team definitely isn't the worst here. She has an obvious weakness to Psychic here that we can try to address. The same goes for any ground type attackers as well. So going into this redesign, those are the 2 main types I'm looking at when designing extra coverage. Here is Agatha's new team. First off, I decided to remove 1 Gengar to allow Agatha some more variety. Then, to fill in the gaps, I've added a Venomoth to help with Psychics, and Venusaur to wall out ground types. Going into this, I noticed how much focus Agatha's original team placed on disruption and status moves, so I decided to keep that thematic in place, with a focus on sleep. Agatha's new lead is her old Haunter, but with some new tools. I've traded out Nightshade for Toxic, Hypnosis for Psychic, and Dream Eater for Mega Drain. This Haunter's goal is to try and disrupt and punish the player's lead Pokemon to try and prevent a sweep straight off the bat. Confuse Ray and Toxic will punish the target for trying to stay in for an extended amount of time. Psychic acts as Haunter's best defensive option, due to just having no good stab, ghost or poison attacks, and Mega Drain helps Haunter deal with any ground types that try to lead. Originally, I was looking at giving this Haunter Curse to further benefit this playstyle, but Curse was actually introduced in Generation 2, which kind of surprised me. Her Golbat comes in quite similar to her original team. However, for some reason she had it equipped with both Supersonic and Confuse Ray. For this team, I took out the Supersonic and gave it a new tool in Leech Life, which should help against the Psychic threat. I decided on adding Venomoth to this team as I felt it fits really well both thematically, aesthetically, and its typing helps Agatha against the Psychics. It comes with Disable, Leech Life, Sleep Powder, and Psychic. Disable and Sleep Powder will act as Venomoth's disruption tools. Disable especially could be extremely useful if used against Psychic to completely void out that move for the next few turns. This would then leave that Pokemon susceptible to either a Leech Life or Sleep Powder. Unfortunately, like I said before, Bug type attacks just really suck in Generation 1, so this is the best we can do. Psychic also comes in as just a really solid attack to help support Venomoth's playstyle. Venusaur fills a very similar role to Venomoth, only aimed towards ground types. It comes to this team with Leech Seed, Sleep Powder, Reflect, and Mega Drain. This is an extremely slow set that is designed for a war of attrition, so when fighting this team, getting Venusaur out of the way quickly is super important. Venusaur's bread and butter here would be quickly applying the combo of Leech Seed and Sleep Powder to both delay your attacks and slowly drain your health. To support this, Venusaur also has access to Barrier, to further wall out any ground types threatening Agatha's team, and to further slow down the fight. Mega Drain is Venusaur's final tool, giving it even more sticking power and life gain. Agatha's original Arbok follows this up with a very similar set to the original team, with Screech swapped out for Double Edge. This Arbok gives Agatha's team some offensive capabilities with Stab Acid, Bite, and Double Edge all being heavy hitting attacks. Glare allows Arbok to have some utility within this fight as well. Finally, Gengar comes in as Agatha's most dangerous tool. This Gengar comes equipped with Confuse Ray, Hypnosis, Dream Eater, and Psychic. This Gengar lends itself to both disruption and hitting extremely hard. Confuse Ray and Hypnosis are both dangerous to face on a Pokemon with 110 base speed. Getting put to sleep is essentially a death sentence, as Gengar will follow this up with Dream Eaters to work away at you. Psychic is also here as a backup heavy hitting attack. Overall, I'm quite happy with this redesign. I think there's still a huge weakness to Psychic, but I don't really know if there's much else we can do to avoid that while staying within the theme. Without Dark types or access to any strong Bug type attacks, Psychics will always have the advantage here, and I think considering the tools that we have access to, this team came out quite nicely. The fourth and final member of the Kanto Elite Four is Lance, the Dragon type specialist. Lance is a similar case to Agatha, specializing in a Pokemon type that is represented by only one evolution line in Generation 1. His team consists of a Gyarados, 2 Dragonairs, an Aerodactyl, and a Dragonite. Just like Agatha, he crams in 3 of the same evolution line to count himself as a Dragon type specialist. Overall, this team can be quite dangerous, but it also has very obvious weaknesses. Every Pokemon on Lance's team runs Hyper Beam, which allows him to always have KO potential against pretty much anything you bring. His Gyarados packs a punch with both Hydro Pump and Hyper Beam, with 2 high impact attacks. Dragon Rage at this point in the game is not too scary at all, and Leer is, well, Leer. His 2 Dragonairs are both exactly the same, running a relatively chill set, but with both having Hyper Beam to still threaten you. Aerodactyl is the same story. Its set of Supersonic, Takedown, Bite, and Hyper Beam presents really only one big threat in Hyper Beam, with absolutely 0 coverage or stab bonuses. Finally, Lance's Dragonite is a similar story, though with the combination of agility and hyper beam, this Dragonite can threaten you quite heavily. Overall, while this team has a decent amount of threat potential, it just has pretty much zero coverage. This is especially rough since Lance gets completely flattened by ice, rock, and electric type attacks. Aside from Gyarados' Hydro Pump, every single attack on Lance's team hits rock types for half damage, where Dragon Rage will only hit for 40 HP. Going into this redesign, I wanted to address this lack of coverage without making the fight too overbearing. Here is Lance's new team. To start with, I got rid of one of the Dragonairs, and in its place I've added 2 dragon-like Pokemon to keep within the thematics and also help with Lance's previous issues. Charizard comes in to help Lance against any ice types looking to sweep through Lance's dragons, and Seadra is here to help with the rock type issues. Lance's Dragonair comes exactly as it was, as a relatively easy start to the fight while still being able to impose damage with Hyper Beam. Now, I know earlier in this video I spoke about how bad and limited the bug type attacks are in this generation, but the dragon type attacks kind of take this to the next level. This is the full list of dragon type attacks in Generation 1. The full list. Dragon Rage, that's literally it. The only dragon type attack in these games is a stronger Sonic Boom. So, to keep in thematics, I think it is important to give Lance's dragon types this attack, but man, it really feels bad. His new Seadra comes in as a wall against those rock types looking to eat up all of the hyper beams. It comes in with a moveset of Smokescreen, Ice Beam, Hydro Pump, and Hyper Beam. This moveset gives pretty nice coverage against any tanky rock types looking to tank through Lance's team. The Hyper Beam gives Seadra a constant threat potential, if you aren't walling this out. Smokescreen comes in as utility in case of a bad matchup to try and force a switch out. Lance's Gyarados comes very close to his original, with Leer traded for Body Slam. Similar to Seadra, its Hydro Pump is extremely helpful in trying to take out the rock-type walls looking to take Hyper Beams. Dragon Rage comes in as the token Dragon-type move. Hyper Beam and Body Slam come in as heavy damage threats as well. Body Slam is a good option here if the Gyarados is looking for consistent damage, whereas Hyper Beam is the best option here if looking to completely take something out. Aerodactyl is another victim of extremely restrictive movesets in Generation 1. Though it's a rock flying type, it does not have access to any rock type attacks, and the only flying type attacks it can learn are Wing Attack, Fly, and Sky Attack. None are necessarily ones you would want to run. Its new moveset is Agility, Double Edge, Fly, and Hyper Beam, with Supersonic traded for Agility, Takedown traded for Double Edge, and Bite traded for Fly. I decided to give Aerodactyl a little more agency compared to its original set. Agility allows it to set up a little bit to most likely outspeed anything you throw at it. Double Edge appears here to give Aerodactyl more presence while active in battle, same with Hyper Beam. I've given Aerodactyl Fly here just to give it a stab attack to further allow it to threaten the player. I do really wish it had access to any rock type attack at all, but again, it's just another Generation 1 quirk we have to deal with. Lance's other new Pokemon, Charizard, provides him with much needed coverage and acts as a second pseudo-ace here. It comes in heavy with a moveset of Seismic Toss, Earthquake, Flamethrower, and Hyper Beam. This moveset gives Charizard very nice coverage over many of its threats. Seismic Toss comes in as a solid hitter, dealing a constant 60 damage if none of Charizard's other options are working. Earthquake comes in clutch here to help Lance deal with his team's obvious electric weakness. I would have loved to give other Pokemon on his team ground attack options as well, but alas, only Charizard here has access to it. Following this up, Charizard's Flamethrower acts as a huge coverage tool to take out any ice types that have been causing Lance trouble thus far. Hyper Beam gives Charizard the option to go all out if needed, to do some serious damage really quickly. Finally, the culmination of this fight is Lance's Dragonite, which appears very similar to the original, with Barrier traded out for Thunder Wave. I think this allows the Dragonite a little more self-sufficiency, since usually this will be the final member of Lance's fight. The agility is nice here to allow Dragonite to properly set up and outspeed pretty much anything you bring against it. Slam acts as a decent damaging tool here for consistent damage in the fights. Thunderwave helps Dragonite against any tricky encounters, hopefully paralyzing and preventing the opponent from retaliating. Finally, Hyper Beam acts as Dragonite's heavy hitting move to take out any threats. Overall, I think this new lineup is a big improvement. I do wish we had more access to coverage with the Pokemon we have. Also, just having Dragon Rage as the sole Dragon type attack in Generation 1 leaves such a bad taste. but regardless, I think this redesign has improved Lance's team a lot and helps him deal with a lot more of his weaknesses. The final challenge you have to overcome, and the champion of Kanto's Elite Four, is Blue. Blue actually brings 3 different teams for you, and the one you face depends on the starter you chose at the start of the game. Of these 3 teams, there are 9 total Pokemon Blue has access to, 3 of them being a constant in every team, those being Pidgeot, Alakazam, and Rhydon. Each of these teams will bring a Fire, Water, and Grass type as the remaining 3 Pokemon, with each team rotating a starter and then either Arcanine, Gyarados, or Exeggutor to cover the remaining types. Honestly, the original teams here are the best so far. Each of them bring pretty decent coverage, and the actual Pokemon selection here is really nice. As for changes, some of the movesets Blue has here are honestly really sad, so our main goal here is to try and fix that. Here are Champion Blue's new teams. Like I said before, the Pokemon selection here is really nice, so I've decided to keep them all as is. For starters, I've given Pidgeot much stronger tools to work with. I've traded Wing Attack for Fly, Sky Attack for Double Edge, and Whirlwind for Agility. Fly and Double Edge give Pidgeot some really heavy hitting stab options. Agility allows Pidgeot to boost its already high speed to start dishing out heavy damage. Mirror Move gives some nice utility to potentially catch players off guard. Blue's Alakazam comes pretty similar to the original, with Psybeam traded for Thunder Wave. This set gives Alakazam heavy utility with Thunder Wave to paralyze quickly with its high base speed, Reflect to boost up its bulk, and Recover to improve its stickiness. Psychic comes in as an extremely heavy hitting move for anything that gets in its way. Rhydon is the final consistent member of each of Blue's teams, and this time it comes with a much more scary moveset. Rhydon's original moveset was honestly just really sad to see, considering this is the final test for Kanto's upcoming champion. To help it fend for itself, I swapped out Leer for Rock Slide and Tail Whip for Earthquake. Rock Slide and Earthquake help give Rhydon some extremely strong stab coverage attacks, with Rhydon's original Horn Drill being a constant threat. Rock Slide also helps Rhydon deal with flying types that are trying to dodge Horn Drill. Fury Attack follows this up as an extra option to finish off the set. From here, there's 3 rotating Pokemon to go through and then the 3 starters. First of all is Blue's Fire rotation, Arcanine. The original Arcanine is similar to Rhydon. I mean, it's the champion and it still has Ember as its fire coverage. To help out the Arcanine, I swapped out Leer for Dig and Ember for Flamethrower. Giving Arcanine Flamethrower is an obvious choice here, it just allows it to be stronger and actually deserving of the spot in the champion's team. Dig is nice for extra ground coverage here as well. I've kept Roar in as its utility could be useful in helping it defend against type counters with its high speed. As well as Takedown for a normal type attack option. Gyarados is Blue's water type rotation Pokemon. Its original moveset again isn't bad, but for this fight I want to really pack in some extra power. I've traded out Dragon Rage for Double Edge and Leer for Blizzard. Double Edge and Hyper Beam both fill the same niche of heavy hitting normal type attacks, but with different payoffs, so having them both allows Gyarados to decide how to play the fight more freely. Hydro Pump is excellent water type coverage, and its new Blizzard gives it a super strong ice type weapon as well. The final of these rotations is Exeggutor. Now, in comparison to other movesets, the original Exeggutor moveset honestly just leaves me a little speechless. This level 61 Exeggutor on the Champions team knows Hypnosis, Barrage, and Stomp. I truly have no idea what they were cooking when they made this. Anyway, to actually give it a fighting chance, I traded Stomp for Mega Drain and filled its empty slot with Psychic. This new moveset actually allows Exeggutor to hold its own in fights, with Grass and Psychic stab moves. Finally, Champion Blue's last 3 Pokemon to cover are each of the starters. For his Venusaur, I've decided to give it a more bulky, self-sufficient set. I've traded out Razor Leaf for Leech Seed, and Solar Beam for Reflect. The Solar Beam felt really redundant, so that was the first thing I decided to take out. By giving it Leech Seed and Reflect, the idea here is that the Venusaur can be much stickier on the field, boosting its bulk and slowly draining the opponent's health. Mega Drain helps it towards this strategy too, and Growth is useful if it is given time to set up. Blue's Charizard came with a pretty nice set. Fire Blast and Slash give pretty decent damage potential, with Fire Spin being annoying cheese to trap its opponents in. For For this set, I've only traded out Rage for Dragon Rage to provide consistent damage. Finally, Blastoise is a similar story to Charizard, coming in with a decent set. Hydro Pump and Blizzard provide really solid damage options and coverage. I traded out Bite for Skull Bash to give Blastoise another heavy hitting attack to threaten any typing. This set is finished off with Withdraw to allow Blastoise to boost its own bulk if it is given space. Overall, all three of these teams came pretty good at a baseline, so there wasn't much I needed to change here. Some of these move choices here were questionable, with Executor as a whole being a mess. But I think with the new changes, I've given Champion Blue a much better fighting chance and a team worthy of being champion. So there we have it, the Kanto Elite Four redesigned and revamped. Overall, I'm very happy with these new teams. I feel I've been able to stay in line with the original aesthetic and thematics of the teams, while adding and editing enough to boost their power levels and give a bigger challenge to the player without being overbearing. Like I said when covering Kanto Gym Leaders, Generation 1 is extremely restrictive in terms of team building, with no held items, no abilities, extremely limited movesets, and no physical special split. Once we progress into newer generations, we get to play with these new mechanics a lot more to make more interesting teams and challenges. This marks all of Generation 1 Kanto done and dusted. From here we can move on to Pokemon Gold, Silver and Crystal and tackle their gym leaders. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you next time.